Freudian's perspective on personality, Freud's perspective on personality. What did we talk about last time you guys were in here? Or last thing you remember, hopefully. Well, I don't know if you've seen the Wednesday one yet either, but yes, ma'am.
Talk about the difference between applied and scientific psychology.
So we just talked about the different types of psychology. We didn't get into personality yet. Okay. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say we talked about the different parts of the brain.
Okay, we did the triune brain model. Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Okay. So we sort of just talked about the divisions of psychology and compared that a little bit to the divisions of the brain. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. So what we ended up talking about in the classes since then were just this idea of personality from a Freudian perspective. And so we're still in the midst of that in terms of just talking about personality broadly. Just a really quick refresher. We've talked about how Freud saw the mind as sort of like an iceberg, where consciousness, that is to say, our conscious mind, exists above the water, and where our unconscious mind exists below the water. Now, Freud believed here, as is evident in this illustration, that most of our mind was unconscious to us, right? He believed that most of what's going on in our psychology aren't things that we are doing purposefully, aren't things that we're even really aware of. And that's what these words mean, right? Consciousness just means awareness, and so unconsciousness means unawareness. You might sometimes hear these, or at least hear unconscious as subconscious. That's something, I don't know how that happened, but that's something that just seemed to happen in the media. So whenever you see unconscious, or whenever you see subconscious in a movie or a TV show or book or something, they really are meaning this, what we're talking about here, this unconscious, not subconscious. So he further splits the psyche, is what he calls the mind. Psyche, or sometimes psyche, if you like. But he splits the psyche into three more parts that span over the conscious and the unconscious mind. He splits these into, it's not going to work. He splits these into what we call the id, the ego, and the superego. Keeping in mind this idea of the conscious and the unconscious mind, you can see that mostly what we have in the conscious mind is our ego. And then most what we have in the unconscious mind is our id, though you can see that a substantial majority portion of the superego is also unconscious to us, and some of the id is conscious to us, but just this really little piece, and then half of the ego, or a substantial portion of the ego even, is hidden to us. So we talked about these ideas of the id being these more basic instincts, the id being these more primitive instincts that we have primarily to do with our survival and propagation and protection. These are going to be things like eating. These are going to be things like aggression, protecting yourself, or defending what's yours, or defending the people that you love or that are important to you. This is also going to be about sex. This is going to be about procreation. This is going to be about feeding yourself. All of those basic needs, all of those basic instincts, Freud said, come out of the id, right? This part of ourself that's almost just an animal. It just wants to survive, and it just wants to win. Our superego, which means above me, super, above, ego just means me or I. So superego here is referencing what we would basically call our conscience. As in, let your conscience be your guide. That is to say, it's the part of our mind that is the collection of our shoulds and shouldn'ts, our rights and wrongs, the things that we want for ourselves and the things that we don't want for ourselves. That is to say, our values, our morals. This collection of values and morals is specific to us. It's personal. It's ours, right? We're looking at the mind of an individual. So this is an individual's superego. It is an individual's sense of morality. However, they get that sense of morality from their environment, right? From the people in their lives, from the things that they witness, things that they read or see. And so even though this comes from the outside, it is still very personal. I stress this because often we can think, there are some things we won't think this about, but there are other things that we will think, well, everybody believes this. Everybody has this value. Everybody has this moral standing. I only have it because everybody else has it. Maybe. But also maybe you've just internalized that, right? And maybe everybody else doesn't have it. So we have this way sometimes of thinking that some of the things that we picked up in our superego should apply to everyone, or they really only apply to us because somebody else is making us, is watching us, maybe secretly, right? Again, this idea of God. And so we have to do those things because, but again, Freud wants to point out here, that's your stuff. Those are your morals. You might have got it from the outside, but it's you impressing it upon yourself. So then we have this ego portion. And sometimes what you see is the ego described as negotiating between the id and the superego, as if it can come to terms with this more primitive part of ourself and this more moralistic, this more godly part of ourself. Well, that description is great because it's the ego giving itself a lot of credit, right? The ego, in fact, is who you are. The ego, in fact, is how you show up in the world. At the very least, it's who you tell yourself you are. This is because the ego's real role, though it bills itself as this arbitrator of truth and fairness and compromise, its real role is to protect you from knowing too much about yourself, especially anything that would be untoward, especially anything that would cause you to think that you're a bad person. The ego's real job is to make sure that you think that you're a good person. The ego's real job is to keep these parts of the id, right, that are a little bit weird or dirty or mean in bay. No, that's not me. I would never do that. I know I had that thought, and I know I stopped myself from doing the thing that I thought about doing, but I would never actually do it or actually think it if, whatever reason, you give yourself. So we spent some time talking about in these classes how these three parts of your mind can have conflict with one another. We call this intrapsychic conflict. Intrapsychic conflict. Conflict within the mind. This is when your id, this example isn't random, so watch the video, but this is when your id wants to sleep with your secretary, And your superego reminds you that you're married. Right? This is that intrapsychic conflict. How do I deal with wanting both of these things? Right? And we talk about sometimes this will rise into consciousness. Sometimes you can hold those two things. I know I want this thing, and I know I shouldn't, or I know that's a bad idea. Freud says that this conflict, right, this conscious awareness of that intrapsychic conflict results in anxiety. That this results in anxiety. That might feel like worry about who you are for having this urge, worry about maybe being caught, worry about what other people would think, what your wife would think. This might feel like guilt, another type of anxiety about your feelings. This might feel like embarrassment about being caught in your feelings. This might feel like shame about being the type of person who would have these feelings, right? All of this is anxiety, right? But it really does require that you can hold both of those things in your head. That you can say to yourself, I want something I know I shouldn't want. Or I feel a way I know I shouldn't feel. The second way was, what did Freud call it? Conversion. Today we would call this what we call somaticizing, but Freud called it conversion. And what this is when you can't quite get that conflict in your head, right? It's a little too, I don't want to face that. It's a little too, no, I would never, right? That you might experience it instead in your body. Well, what's this look like? Well, these are just stress responses, right? These are just muscle aches and headaches and butterflies in your stomach and sweating, right? These are just ways that you might experience anxiety, or again, what we would today call stress responses. This is just ways that you would experience that in your body, right? It's not even palatable enough for you to think about it consciously, right? You can't even get it in your head. It's so shameful, going that word. And so instead, maybe you just push it down and you feel stressed about it. Like literally feel in your body. The third way, and what we're really supposed to be talking about today, is that you wouldn't be able to bring it into conscious awareness at all, not even in your physicality. That this conflict would remain unconscious to you, that it would be so unpalatable, that it would be so undesirable, that you would, I can't use this word, but you would repress it altogether. Don't write that word repression down, please, because it's going to be confusing here in a minute. But you would push it down, right? You would ignore it. Freud says if you do that, you're going to engage in what we call defense mechanisms. Okay? Defense mechanisms. So a couple of things I had folks think about, in addition to my secretary example, that was one of those. In terms of this conflict, another one is you're starving, kid walks in, kid's 7, walks in, sits next to you, and has got a plate of whatever food you want most right in that moment. Right? And thinking about how your id would respond, how your superego would respond, and how your ego would respond. How do you know how your ego would respond? Well, it's how you would respond, right? This is a personality section, and we're thinking about how personality shows up. And Freud would say that your personality, or one of the ways that your personality shows up, is this negotiation, if you will, between these parts of your mind that result in your ego presenting one form of that conflict, right? One answer. I want to beat the kid up and steal his food. The id says, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, who cares? He's a kid. What's he going to contribute? I'm a finance major. You know? Really important. This kid's just still wasting money. So I'm going to take his food, right? That's what your id wants. Your superego, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't steal from kids. Everybody's looking at you. The professor might think you're a shitty person, drop you a letter grade, right? I remember when I was a kid. Kids get hungry too, right? Your superego's giving you all of this. And so maybe, right, in what I did in class, and you'll see this in the videos, I went around and I just asked folks what they would do. And you get something between, I would just take it, right? You might do the full thing that your id wants. Maybe you don't beat him up or kill him, you know, which your id might suggest, but you kind of do far over here, or maybe you ignore it altogether. I can wait, it's not a big deal, I'm not that hungry, class is only this much longer, etc., etc. Or maybe you do something in the middle. I ask for some, I distract him, I take what he doesn't finish, right? And Freud again is saying, this is how your personality is showing up, as the negotiation within that conflict. But, right, what if you can't negotiate the conflict? What if you can't feel anxious about it or even express it physically? Again, we end up with defense mechanisms. I give a definition in one of the videos, but basically defense mechanisms are unconscious strategies, right? These are things, again, you're doing unconsciously. They're unconscious strategies to avoid, or to minimize unwanted or unpalatable desires or troubling realities, right? Things that you want that you feel like you shouldn't want, or things that are that you don't want to be, right? Troubling realities or unwanted desires. Defense mechanisms are going to help us deal with these things. Again, this is a product of the ego, because the ego wants us to feel good about ourselves. The ego wants us to think we're good people. And so if we have some desire, right? We're married, good Christian man, and yet the secretary. That might be something that's a troubling reality for that person. And so the ego wants to say, no, you're still a good person. And so the first thing it might do is what we call, of course, denial. What's denial? What's denial?
Basically just like telling yourself no, like basically you're just like telling yourself like against the fact that something happened. Like you're gonna keep telling yourself that no, like, I couldn't have done that, there's no way I could have, when in reality it did happen.
Very good. Right, it's sort of ignoring the truth or talking your way out of it. I like ignoring the truth better. I don't want to say denying the truth, but that's not helpful. So it's some ignoring of the truth. It's important that you understand that in denial, the person knows on a level. This is barely unconscious, if it's unconscious at all, right? The person has some sense of the truth, but is just choosing, no, that didn't happen. I didn't even look at it, right? This kind of thing. Make sense? Denial's easy. Freud said that denial was the most juvenile, the most immature of the defense mechanisms. Because again, there's not a lot of mental work happening here. It's just, no, I'm not gonna look at that. Billy, did you steal the cookies from the cookie jar? No. Mom, I've never seen those cookies. Crumbs all over his face. Right? The kid knows the truth. The kid knows he stole them. He just doesn't want mom to know that. Why doesn't he want mom to know that? What's the ego's problem with just saying, yes, I ate all the cookies? What's the ego's problem with that?
Ruins your character.
Say what?
Ruins your character.
It ruins your character. Why? Good. Because he stole them, right? I mean, I haven't told you this part of the story, but you can assume that if mom's asking, Billy, did you eat the cookies, that he probably wasn't supposed to. Right? And if Billy breaks mom's rules, then Billy's a bad boy, Billy's a bad kid. Billy's not a bad kid. I'm a good boy. Mom tells me that once or twice a week, you know? And so, instead, you just deny. No, I would never do that. I'm a good kid. Right? Kids can do it. It's a bit immature. The next one is called displacement. This is often called the kick the cat defense. Okay. Tell you a little story. The version of this I was told had the genders flipped. I'm gonna flip them back over, make it a little more modern, I guess. And I don't think it would work the other way anymore, quite frankly. So we got a guy, we'll say his name, no, sorry, I switched them. We've got a woman, we'll say her name is Susan, okay? Susan works at a place where she works at a desk and she has to do paper work. And so Susan's at her desk one morning and she got in a little bit late for reasons at home. And so she gets to work, sits at her desk, you know, she's typing away, doing her job, and her boss comes by and he says, Susan, where the hell were you this morning? You were supposed to have these reports on my desk 30 minutes ago, and I see you're only still halfway through them. And the boss just lays into her. You know, if I didn't need you so bad, I'd let you go right now. You're lucky, blah, 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 right? Just tells her she's not a good worker, and she's lucky, she's here, she doesn't deserve it. All this stuff. How's Susan feel about this? What's that? Bad? What kind of bad? Upset? Okay. What else? How's Susan feel about this?
Kind of like bruises here at ego, just like feeling a little certain, I guess.
Okay. Susan's a tough executive woman. Okay. Like, she's been called worse, and she's gotten this far. Just to give you a little bit about Susan. How's Susan feel? Her boss comes and tells her how to do her job.
I mean, if she's used to being yelled at, she might just brush it off. Like, maybe if she's displacing it, she knows she.
Oh, too nice. Where's somebody mean? Yes.
She doesn't think it's justified, and so she argues, or in her head, she at least argues that that is unjustified to be mad at her for something she can't control.
How does she feel?
Annoyed.
Annoyed. I need mad, right? She's angry. Who the fuck is this guy coming in here telling me how to do my job? He's got this job because his daddy gave it to him. Right, whatever. So she's just pissed off. But it's her boss. You know, and she could get another job, but this one's pretty good. She makes a lot of money. She gonna yell at her boss? She's pissed off. She wants to yell at him.
I mean,
You yell at her?
they're saying no.
What's that?
So her ego's probably saying no.
Her ego's probably saying no. Why?
So she's gonna lose the job.
She's gonna lose her job. Is that coming out of her ego? Is that coming out of her id?
Oh, that would be super ego?
What about superego?
I guess
Well, I was gonna say,
Oh, this guy, sorry. In the red back there. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say it could be coming from her id, cause like she might have to figure that out.
that's an interesting take. I want you to hold on to that. We'll come back around to that. Yes, sir?
I interpreted it as that it came from the superego because that's where your values are. So like, kind of saying going off what he was saying, thinking about the family maybe, or thinking about how like just emotionally that may come off as irrational. So, I feel like those thoughts kind of come from that area.
Very good. So this is going to come out of the superego. I think you said it. Right, this is going to come out of the superego. The id's the one, I don't have him up here no more, but the id's the one that wants to kick his ass and tell him what's what. How dare you? Right?
Yeah.
The superego's the one that's like, no, whoa, 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 whoa. Now we kind of need this job. He's paying you a little bit more than you're worth. I think it's, he's just a little yelling at you. So I'm going to fire you. Right? And so the superego is going to be the one pumping the brakes. Okay? Well, for whatever reason, she can't process this consciously. She needs to get her work done. And so she's just like, yeah. That's the ego. Okay. Sorry. Susan has, a relatively regular day at work, but she is kind of hot and bothered about this. She is kind of mad. So Susan goes home, and again, this is a modern story. So she has a kept husband. What's that mean? Kept husband? What?
Stay at home.
She got a stay at home husband. Okay, that's what a kept husband means. You got a stay at home dad husband. Okay?
I'm over here, I'm like, is he in her basement? Like, is she like tucking him away?
Again, I flipped the genders. It used to be stay at home mom. You get it? So you got stay at home husband. She gets home, and we'll call her husband, I don't know, Tim. Tim is, she walks in, and Tim's playing video games. Sitting on the couch in his underwear and a t-shirt, playing video games. And Susan is hungry. And so she comes in and she says, Tim, is this what you've been doing all day? All I ask is that you have dinner on the table when you get home, and it doesn't even look like you've got off the couch today. What's about to happen for Tim?
He's about to get yelled
He's about to get yelled at. Why is Tim about to get yelled at?
Because she had a bad day at work.
Yeah.
What's that?
Because she had a bad day at work.
Because she had a bad day at work.
She's taking her day out.
She's taking her day out on her husband.
Yeah.
Why? Why on her husband and not on her boss?
Oh, there's nothing bad's gonna happen
Because
to
her-
the husband.
Because her boss is in charge of her, but she's kind of in charge of her husband.
Another reason I had to switch the genders, but yes, okay? Because her boss is kind of in charge of her. The understanding around displacement, by the way, is one of the understandings of displacement is that you don't want to take out negative emotions on what we would call here an unsafe target, right? Your superegos, in addition to telling you about morals, is also telling you about consequences. You get fired, right? You could get demoted. He can make you do shitty work. You could embarrass yourself in front of your coworkers, whatever it is. So the superego is also giving you all of these messages, and so that makes the boss an unsafe target, right? This could ruin a lot of things for me. It's not really worth it, and yet she still is holding on to this anger, so she goes home and finds a target that's a little bit safer. She makes some money, right? What's he gonna do? So she goes and she yells at her husband. Husband goes in the kitchen and he trips on a toy truck. And Billy's over in the corner kind of crashing the two other ones together. What's about to happen to Billy, maybe? It's about to be yelled at. What the hell you got all these cars on the floor for? I had to get you ready for school and yada yada. And your mom's yelling at me because she was late for work because you couldn't get in the bath. Or whatever. Okay? He lays in the Billy. Go to your room. Billy goes to his room. He's pretty mad. In Billy's room is a cat. It's about hacking the cat. Cat. So this kick the cat idea, right, of displacement is again about shifting that energy onto a safer target. Now I've given you one with anger, but it can really be anything, right? It could be that you're really, really excited about something and you're in a situation where you can't be excited. It could be the guy with the secretary who really turns him on. What's a way that he could displace that energy? Yeah.
I mean, to be quite blunt, going home and having sex with his wife.
That's right, right? He goes home and he's all turned on, and his wife is like, hey, you've been a little frisky this week. What's going on? But really, right, he's just displacing that energy, right? He's displacing, in that case, the sexual energy. It could, again, be anger. It could, again, be happiness. It could be anxiety. Whatever it is. It's about moving it to a target that's safer. Because this, I can't stand being mad at my boss, or at least I can't enact that, or I can't stand that I might have this attraction to somebody that's not my spouse, but I'm going to take that energy and move it into a place that is more acceptable. Questions about this? All right. Rationalization. This is probably one that you've heard before, but rationalization, of course, just means explaining away whatever it is that you think happened or don't want to have happened, right, into something that's a little bit more favorable for you. Who's got an example of a rationalization they've seen or heard? Somebody who has rationalized. Maybe a little encouragement. We tend to say that rationalization is the defense of the intellectual, of the smart man. Anybody? I'll take a half hand. Yes, sir.
So I guess sometimes from an anxious point of view, your mind can kind of spiral into that irrational. But since your mind wants it to be rational and you want to feel like you're thinking with validity, you can kind of tweak it or alter the way that you're thinking of a scenario
Right?
to make it match that better. So like if you're anxious about like doing bad on like a test or something, you can like tweak it to be like, well, maybe they didn't word the questions correctly. So maybe like if I like bring that up to them, like they'll be like, oh yeah, you're totally right, and I'll get a better grade.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let me help with a little bit of bringing it back to. Let's just take Susan back to work. Okay, Susan's back at work. Boss comes up. Where are these things you're supposed to have them? Yada yada yada. How could Susan rationalize there?
She was late, so she didn't have as much time.
Say what?
She was late, so she didn't have as much time.
Okay, I was late. I'm sorry, I didn't have as much time. That's sort of a reason, but yeah, that's getting close to rationalization. Yeah.
She could think like, oh, maybe he just had a bad day already or something.
Okay, so she might sort of rationalize for him. He's yelling at me not because I'm a bad worker, but because maybe he's had a bad day and this is all about him. Good. Yes, sir.
Could remember excuses or explanation as to why she was late to both convince her she's still a good worker, like convince herself she's still a good worker, and give excuses to her.
That's right. If it hadn't been for my husband and the kid wasn't ready, then I probably would have had all of this. I mean, I'm usually really good at this work, right? Rationalizing. Is that a hand? Yes, ma'am?
Maybe because she's like, maybe it's just a whole bunch of stuff that I need to type up. Maybe that's why I don't have it done yet.
Very good. Right? So any type of thing. Anything that's like, I did it because. It's not me. It's because X, Y, and Z happened. Or didn't happen. What's some ways that, I don't think we gave him a name. Call him, Joe. What's the reason that Joe might rationalize wanting to sleep with a secretary? What's some rationalization for that? Yeah.
Because everybody has like needs and wants.
Say again?
Everybody has like needs and wants.
Everybody's got needs. What else? Guys, a little quiet on this one. Yeah.
Maybe, he rationalizes it with like, well, my wife doesn't ever like, I guess I'm being blunt here, my wife doesn't ever put out, or my wife doesn't like.
Okay, she's not paying me enough attention.
Yeah,
Right? Everybody's got needs, and she's not paying me enough attention.
yeah.
What else? Yes, sir. You got a lot.
Better looking than my wife.
She's better looking than my wife.
You gotta put all the options on the
She didn't
table.
like it. I like that.
I'm not saying it's right.
But right, and it may or may, and that's important, right? In terms of the rationalization, it may or may not be true. It doesn't matter, right? It's just what you have told yourself to make it a little more okay. She's better looking than my wife. My wife let herself go. We've been married 15 years. Hey, I'm sorry. Did I need to flip the gender for that one too? Okay, yeah, I apologize. But right, so that's rationalization. I should point out that there is a type of rationalization that we call an intellectualization. And you gave me an intellectualization the first time, which is everybody has needs. So when you rationalize, you still keep it within the realm. You still keep it within the realm of your own situation. You haven't been paying me enough attention. She is better looking than you, right? When you intellectualize, you sort of cast this grand argument on why things just happen the way they happen, and you just got caught up in that, right? It's even less your fault. Men just have needs. What do you expect? Men like new women, whatever it is, right? It's just this idea that it's not really about me. It's not about what I needed or even what you did or what she did. It's just the way of things. And so it's just the way of things, right? So this is, again, it's still rationalizing, but it's an intellectualization when you take it to the level of, I'm not even explaining myself. I'm just explaining why things occur this way in general. Does that make sense, that difference? Right? Questions so far? Okay. Next one. I always say this is my favorite. I don't know why it's my favorite. Except that it's the first time we start getting into some cool psychological gymnastics of escaping blame for one's own actions. Maybe that's interesting to me. This one comes with a little saying, to the thief. Anybody know how to finish that? That's to the victor go the spoils, but to the thief, nobody ever knows this. Maybe it's not a saying. Nobody's ever known what this is. To the thief, everyone's a thief. To the thief, everyone's a thief. What's that mean? To the thief, everyone's a thief.
Everyone steals.
What do you mean?
Like, everyone steals things now and then. Like, they'll have a hard time and they have to steal,
Sure,
a bag of bread.
sure. So, what's that saying got to do with this psychological action? You're saying it, but say it. Oh. Why to the thief is everyone a thief? What I've chosen to illustrate this defense mechanism. Yes, sir.
You project yourself on everyone else so it looks like a social norm, so it makes you feel like it's a normal thing to do.
Perfect. Right? You project yourself onto everyone else so it feels normal. Yeah, I'm a thief. Whatever. Everybody's a thief. Everybody's a thief. So I'm not such a bad guy, right? Again, here's the ego doing the work. You're not a bad person. Everybody steals. I gotta point out though, that if you say that to yourself, if you say, I'm not a bad person, everybody steals, what do we have here? What's that? Denial, there's a little denial in there, but it goes further.
intellectualizing.
We're intellectualizing, right? Or if you just want rationalizing, whatever. But we're wrapping this around. So here's what you need to understand about projection. It's not stated, it is believed, right? We're in psychology. We're talking about the unconscious mind. This is a belief that this person will have, not a thing that they will have to tell themselves. They may say it, but they really do believe it, whether they say it or not. What does that look like? If I'm a thief and I think everybody's a thief, what does that look like? I believe it. What does that look like? Yeah.
Only believe something, you might go to the grave with it. So like, no matter what anybody else says, your mind's gonna go back to that natural gravitation towards that.
Okay. So it's an idea that's going to be maybe hard to let go.
Right. Like it's standard.
Good. How might my behavior change? My interactions.
Would you try to convince people of your own belief, and so that way you're projecting that belief onto other people?
Try to get them to be
And
thieves.
yeah, and you're saying something about everyone, when you say that I'm a thief and everyone else is a thief, and you believe that, then you're projecting that belief onto everybody else, even though they might not be.
Okay. Yes. I'm looking for a specific behavior that you can catch the projector in. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you like kind of like deflect what you believe on another person. So say like, I'm a thief, I can't leave people in my house because everybody else is a thief too. So you're kind of like using that to like rationalize, like you just believe everybody else does it because you do it.
Very good. And here's what I'm looking for, right? If you believe everybody's a thief, you're going to treat everybody like a thief, right? Why are you looking in my pockets? There's nothing in here for you, right? You're gonna treat people with that suspicion because you have a good sense of what thieves do, what they look for, how they act, how they move. And you're probably going to overcompensate in some ways and thinking that, seriously, right? And overcompensate in some ways to protect yourself from the things that you know that you can perpetrate upon other people, right? To the thief, everyone's a thief, so I'm going to treat folks like they're thieves, which means I'm going to probably protect myself from some of the things that they're doing. The example I was about to switch to before you got it, because this is the one that folks seem to get the most, is what does it look like if a cheater is projecting? What does it look like if Joe uses projection to deal with his secretary situation? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so maybe he's like, maybe it's flipped around. So Joe wants to, do it with his secretary, and maybe just so happens that week his wife is very like sexually like she's ready. So maybe he's thinking in the back of his head, does she have somebody at work that she's like? So
very good, right? He might take those signs, right? He might take her just being in the mood as some displacement of somebody at work that's getting her going the same way that somebody at work's getting him going, right? If I'm a cheater, she's probably cheating too, so, or if I'm thinking about it, she's probably thinking about it too, right? So this is, again, that projection. It's not necessarily that you have to say it to yourself. You might, but it is the real belief of it, right? When we think about rationalization, we can understand that sometimes you just say stuff to get out of stuff, right? And that you can rationalize and not really believe it or even kind of consider if you believe it, you're just saying it, right? I don't know, I thought it was red. I thought it was yellow, right? Do you believe that? I don't know. But in terms of the projection, everybody runs yellow lights, right? I believe that. It's not just something I'm saying to get out of a ticket, right? Something else I wanted to tell you about this. Oh, projection doesn't always have to be a negative again. I tend to use negative examples, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing. I'll give you a harder example here in a second, but to the thief, everyone's a thief. Now that might mean I guard myself, and maybe I do still do that. But it also might mean that I'll be seeing somebody in the store that I don't know. I just pointed at you, I don't know. But let's say I see her in the store, I don't know her. And I say, listen, they've got 2 of these TVs and nobody's looking. I think if we both carry them like stacked, I think we can get them out of here. Right? This is also a projection. I'm not afraid of her in the sense that she might steal something, but I'm a thief and I think everybody else is a thief, so like, hey, let's just talk about thieving together. Well, whatever, I'm gonna teach you. So, one way that I've heard students tell me that this happens, not to bring up, difficult topics, but to bring them up, is I've had white students tell me that this happens sometimes with racist folks, right? They'll be somewhere random, somebody's kind of racist, and they'll just come up to them and start saying racist stuff. And not like to them, but just about other people or espousing their beliefs, right? And again, here's a projection. Everybody's kind of a little racist, so it's okay if me and you start a conversation about those people over there that, I don't know, kind of loud. Does this make sense? Projection. Questions? Again, I give that other example again because sometimes it's joining, right? Sometimes it's, hey, you're like me, we both do bad stuff, so let's be buddies. And other times it's, whoa, I know what that means. All right, reaction formation. Reaction formation is another one of my favorites. It often goes hand in hand with projection. It doesn't have to, but it often goes hand in hand with projection in the sense that sometimes what you're reacting to isn't really there. But what it means is that you've got something inside of you that you're conflicted about. You're a thief. We'll start there. And rather than maybe just projecting that into everybody else as a way to make yourself feel better, one thing you may do instead, or in addition, is hate thieves. I hate thieves. They're the worst people. They're always stealing stuff, always looking in your pockets. If I earn money, it should be my money, right? Right? But here's the idea, right? It's that you've got this part of yourself inside of you that you really don't like, that your ego is like, I'm trying to help you here. That's kind of bad. That's kind of bad stuff. And so one way that you may react to that is you may find that aspect in somebody else and hate it in them instead, right? I'm a thief and I don't know, I mean, I steal because I gotta feed my family, but you're just greedy. Lock her up. Don't quote me on that. But does that make sense? Right? This idea of turning that over and trying to hate somebody because it's really something that represents you that you can't hate internally, right? Your ego won't really let you do that. Your ego won't really let you just really not like yourself. If you think you don't like yourself, that's also a trick of the ego to get you to like yourself. But here, instead, the ego just says, no, you can't hate yourself. You gotta hate somebody else for what you're doing. Anybody got a better example of that? Just saw one in the news. I always use examples like this. I just saw one.
Could it be like hating someone for something that you think they caused, but they didn't really cause? Like say you hate homelessness, and so, like you hate being homeless, and you like, so that way like you hate rich people, or something like that, you know what I mean? Is that something different?
It would be more like you're homeless and you hate other homeless people.
Yeah.
or you once were homeless, and you hate other homeless people. Right? Yes, sir. That's you. Yep.
Could it be like anybody who's being a hypocrite, like about anything, then that's using reaction formation?
Exactly. Yes.
So like, I don't really know for an example, but I think people do it more often than we're thinking, like,
Oh yeah.
you're mad at somebody for lying when you just lied to them 5 minutes ago.
That's right. And it makes you more mad. Why did you lie to me? Right? And you've been lying the whole time. What's another one? Anybody in the news recently? Nobody? Jerry Falwell Jr. Somebody tell me that story.
Oh, so I was just gonna say, like, the secretary and Joe,
Yeah.
I think his name was, if his wife cheated and he also cheated, he would still get really mad at her, even though he did the same thing.
That's right. And he threatened to divorce her. How, I can't believe you would threaten our marriage like this, right? And mean it. Sweetie, you cheated first. Yeah, but it's different. What? So Jerry Falwell Jr. was the president of Liberty University, very religious, conservative university, espouses, no sex before marriage, espouses homosexuality is a sin, all of this stuff, right? All of the down the line stuff. Well, it just turns out, right, he got caught like in a 3-way relationship with some other guy that would sleep with him and his wife, and this all came out, and he just resigned. What's that?
He was a voyeur.
Oh, so he's just watching.
Yeah.
So the idea there, though, right, is just that he's probably a guy who was up there saying that all of this very stuff was terrible and horrible, and you could never break the vows of your marriage. One man, one woman, right? And then it turns out, of course, that he's doing some of the very stuff that he was so strongly against. We see it with politicians all the time. We see it, unfortunately, again, with religious leaders all of the time, where they'll have this thing that they really espouse against. It's often homosexuality or pedophilia or, something, right? And then we find out a few weeks, months, years later that they're sleeping with their intern, or they've got a secret boyfriend down in Cabo, or they've got 2 other wives in a different part of the country, right? Stuff like this. And so these are just great examples of reaction formation, right? This sense of getting up. It really is just about being a hypocrite, but this sense of getting up and being really against the thing that you are actually doing. And again, this isn't a rationalization. This person would really feel that. This person would really feel that hatred or that dislike or that fear or dissatisfaction, whatever it is, about that thing, while at the same time holding this conflict of, I sometimes do that, and that would probably really just make them madder about it. Anybody ever feel this way? You don't have to give me an example, but just tap into your own mind here and think about a thing that you've seen done that you hate that you know that you do, or a type of person that you are that you hate when they show up doing this thing, right? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if it's just me, but you know how certain races will do certain things. So if I see a black person doing a certain thing that I know black people do, I get so annoyed. I'm like, oh, I hate when y'all do that.
Yes. Good, right? There's a bit of reaction formation in that, right? Do you ever do the thing that you?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. So good. I appreciate your insight into your own process. Right. That's the first step. Good. So reaction formation again is really just a form of hypocrisy. I'm gonna try to rush through these last ones, so we don't have to pick this up in a different video. The next one is what we call regression. Regression, oh, this is great. I want to tell some of these stories about it, but regression is going backwards. It's a way in which, in order to feel safer in a situation or more comfortable, or maybe to try to get what you want, you regress. And again, regressing just means to go backwards. what this looks like is somebody enacting behaviors that they would have enacted as a child in a situation that's tough for them, or that they're not getting, again, what they want. I always say in here, and again, it's not cut and dry, but generally, women and men regress in different ways. What do women do as a regression if their boyfriend's in the room? What have women that maybe you've dated in the past done when they don't get what they want?
Silent treatment.
Silent treatment, great regression. I'm just not gonna talk to you. What else? What's up? Complain, okay. That's pretty adult. I don't like what you did. Yes? Okay, negative attitude. Yes, so get a little irritated. This woman would be less confrontational.
Oh, they keep asking.
Okay, they keep asking, and then how's that sound?
Are you serious?
How's that sound? Nobody's gonna tell me here. I know the guys are talking.
They cry.
They cry. Or yes. Yes. Or what I was really asking for, but cry works really well, is baby talk. Right? But this is a clear regression, right? They're going back to acting like, and again, I'm just using kind of a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, but they go back to acting like when they were a little girl and they could maybe, who does this work on? Which parent in particular? Actually, daddy. And here's a little dad transference. We'll talk about that when we get to psychosexual stages. Yes,
I was
sir.
gonna say it could depend a lot on the household. When I was growing up, I had the luxury of having a dad that told me that, like, I could show my emotions and then it
Sure.
could display them.
This
So-
is highly gendered and it's a shortcut.
Well, but I mean, what I'm saying is that in my personal, like, relationship, there are times that maybe the argument gets heated and I myself cry. And my girlfriend grew
Sure.
up in a household where her emotions couldn't be shown, so she doesn't. So it's kind of flip-flopped.
Interesting.
Which is interesting.
And so this is just a generalization. Of course, guys pout all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, guys pout a lot. And girls do this other thing. So what do guys do? Ladies who have boyfriends, what do guys do when they don't get what they want?
They get mad.
Okay, they get mad. What's that look like?
Silent treatment too.
Maybe the silent treatment. Yes?
What?
What were you saying?
Nothing.
She won't tell us about her boyfriend. What else? Happens a lot around here.
Punch a wall.
What did you say?
I said punch a wall.
Yes. Punch a wall. Yes.
Throw something.
Throw something. What are all of these versions of? It's a temper tantrum, right? This is a grown-up temper tantrum, right? Where girls maybe regress, again, this is gender, where girls maybe are more likely to regress as a pouty, cryy. Boys are, what did you do? Right? They're gonna punch a wall, throw something, peel out of the driveway. Anybody seen this one? These are all just temper tantrums. I'm gonna be loud and obnoxious because I didn't get what I want. These are all regressions, right? Some reality is troubling, something happened that they didn't want to happen, and so they're just gonna lose it as a way to show everybody, you know, I'm a big boy. The next one is what we call repression. They sound similar, but they're very different. Repression means pushing down. And repression is like a very, very extreme denial. You've probably heard of like repressed memories, and where denial is just denying or ignoring what you know to be true. Repression is an actual forgetting of what happened, of the incident. This often only occurs in the event of extreme trauma or some extreme psychological event. Right? This isn't one we just go to because we ate the cookies and we don't want to remember that. This is something that we go to if we've been in a car accident And we didn't get damaged physically, but we saw somebody in front of us get, terribly hurt. And our mind just sort of pulls that memory out and stuffs it into the unconscious. So, you've probably again heard of repressed memories, and that is a way that can work. The thing you should understand, right, is it's not just a true forgetting. You do still remember this somehow unconsciously. What we tend to find is that even if the person does not have the memory of the thing that got repressed, of the thing that was traumatic to them, we often find that they will still have a reaction to that thing, right? It was a blue car that ran in front of you that hit that guy, and you saw it and it was terrible, but you repressed it. But whenever you see a blue car, I don't know, I just feel weird, right? This is how repression can work, right? You sort of forget it. You don't have the memory of it, but you still, in a way, have the experience of it. All right, last one I'll give you is called sublimation. Now, there are many more defense mechanisms. This list is pretty close to the original list that Freud pointed out, but there have been other ones added. So humor, mindfulness. I think the answer to psychological difficulties is called a defense mechanism sometimes. Acceptance, right? Listen, honey, I would never cheat on you, but my secretary at work is really beautiful. I think maybe, whatever, right? There's some acceptance in there that prevents all of that turmoil. And so some of the defense mechanisms are good. Freud only identified one that was good. Again, we've come around to some others that we would consider good. Humor, right? Doesn't really hurt anybody, but you just laugh at the fact that your boss yelled at you, right? But sublimation is really a type of displacement. It's a type of displacement where you take the energy in its inappropriate form and you get it out of you in an appropriate way. What could Susan have done after her boss yelled at her to not go home and be pissed off at her husband? What could she have done between getting yelled at her boss and arriving at home?
Going to do some yoga.
She could have done some yoga. Good. What else is he stretching?
Got some food.
She could have got some food. Maybe she's hungry. Yeah.
She could have vented about it. even
She could have vented. She could have went out with the girls after work and had some drinks and just kind of said, "Don't you all hate that asshole?" Yeah.
You could've got with the secretary.
Yes. Maybe, right? That would maybe be a sublimation, but maybe she's got to do some other stuff over here to deal with that. Or maybe she's in an open marriage. This is a modern story. All right. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Look, again.